Okay, now let's talk about the differences between saturated and unsaturated fat. So first of all, let me ask you a question. Which one is healthier, saturated or unsaturated? Many of you will say that unsaturated fat is healthier, correct? Unsaturated fat is healthier. So what makes unsaturated fat relatively healthier than saturated fat? So as I told you that fatty acid, they have a COOH group, we call it carboxyl group. Or some people call it carboxylic acid group. So for saturated fat, there's no double bond between the carbon atoms. For unsaturated fat, you have at least one double covalent bond, double bonds between carbon atoms. I don't know if you remember the previous slides when we talked about the structure of triglyceride. That picture shows you that we have two fatty acid chain that has no double bond and one fatty acid chain that has one double bond. So this is the double bond that we're talking about in the fatty acid. Let's take a look. So this is the saturated fat because all carbon, they only have the CC single bond. But this is unsaturated fat because we have CC double bond in here. So how come the saturated fat, they are solid in room temperature, but unsaturated fat, they are liquid in room temperature? Well, the thing about this saturated fat, as I told you, that they only have a CC single bond. So they are like straight line, like this, like my arm straight. And then if you remember triglyceride, they have 3 fatty acid chain molecules. So they will just stack on each other like this. Because they are straight, and so they can stack on each other very stably. They can stack on each other. Not only within the molecule, but also in between molecule. So if you have a saturated glycerol triglyceride molecule, so it is like, you have 3 straight chain here, and then you have another saturated glycerol molecule. Then because they have straight chain, they can all stack on each other. They can all stack on each other very stably. They can all stack on each other. That's why when they can stack on each other in a very stable manner, then they will form solid in the room temperature. On the other hand, for unsaturated fat, they have at least one CC double bond. What happens when you have CC double bond? The fatty acid chain will be bent like this. It will bend like this. So, in other words, when a triglyceride molecule, it has the CC double bond in at least one of the fatty acid chain molecule, then inside the molecule they will stack on each other. Well, I should say in between the triglyceride molecule, if they are unsaturated, let's say this, they bend, and then this one also bend. When they stack on each other, then they won't be able to be very stable. So like this, they won't be able to sit on each other stably because they have a band, at least one band. The truth is that the fatty acid molecule can have more than one CC double bond. When they have more than one CC double bond, it can actually bend the fatty acid chain even more, making it very unstable, making each triglyceride molecule, when they stack on each other, it becomes very unstable. That's why they are liquid at the room temperature. So you can see that, you have one CC double bond here, but for this molecule, it has 2 CC double bond in the fatty acid. So if you have one CC double bond, we call it monounsaturated. If you have two or more, we call it polyunsaturated. And let me ask you a question. Is this cis or trans? Is this cis or trans? Is this cis or trans? If you remember a few slides before, these three CC double bond, they are all cis configuration. The cis unsaturated fat, they are naturally occurring in nature. Remember, the cis unsaturated fat, they are naturally occurring in nature. See, I told you that for saturated fatty acid chain, they are straight. But for unsaturated fatty acid chain, they are bent. So as you can see that the more double bond in this picture here, the more double bond you have, so you have one double bond in here, and then you have two double bond in here, and then you have three double bond in here. Three double bond in here. The more double bond you have, the band of the fatty acid chain is more severe. In other words, if it is a polyunsaturated fat, then it will so-called reduce density, meaning that you make the lipid molecule extremely fluid, so that they will have a high chance to become oil instead of fat. What about trans fat? Trans fat is basically, remember the word trans, we talk about cis trans. So let me remind you. You will have a CC double bond if the H is arranged diagonally. If the hydrogen atom arranged diagonally, then we call it trans configuration. And this is actually the structure of a trans fat in the unsaturated fat. So the trans fat is basically having this configuration. And how come trans fat is unhealthy to human body? Because, as I said before, cis fat, when you have CC double bond, but if all the hydrogen atoms are on the same side, then we call it cis. When you have a cis fat, they are naturally occurring. So our body can recognize the naturally occurring fat, and then we can break it down. But for the trans fat, it is made by human being, yes, artificially made. That's why it has a trans configuration. The trans configuration, well, human body cannot recognize it. When human body cannot recognize it, there will be two options. One is that our body will get rid of it, and it is the best case scenario. But if our body cannot get rid of it, what will happen? Our body will just so-called store it in our body, or we call it accumulation. When you have a lot of molecule accumulate in your body that you cannot break down or utilize them, then they can potentially form cancer in the future. So that's why trans fat is relatively unhealthy than cis fat. And it says that they are the partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. So yeah, try not to consume too much of the trans fat. So FDA, that means the US government, has been trying to eliminate the trans fat. So what do we do? So the government they actually add hydrogen to the unsaturated trans fat. So all these are the example of having a trans fat. Well, vegetable oil can have trans fat if we human modify it, but for margarine, yes, it has trans fat. You have liquid margarine or soft margarine, they all have trans fat. And then for stick margarine, it is completely solid. Last but not least, you have shortening, which is completely solid. It has a very high trans fat. Let us take a look at some of the examples of saturated and unsaturated fat or oil. As you can see that the good one, they are mostly mostly from plant. They are all oil, meaning that they are mostly unsaturated. Starting from lard, you can see that. Hold on. Starting from lard, you can see that the percentage is about half and half, 60-40. And then beef, tallow, 50-50. Butter is even worse, mostly unsaturated fat. And then the exception are these two cases. These two are the weird one. Palm kernel oil and coconut oil. They are plants. They are oil, but they have a high percentage of saturated fat. That makes them bad. And the table we show you on the previous slides, it is consistent with the Harvard Medical School finding. The palm oil and coconut oil, they have a very high saturated fat content. And so here, basically almost all unsaturated fat, they are healthy one. As long as they are unsaturated, then they are good. And you can see that most of the unsaturated fat, they are plant, except this one. This is fish. Fish has a lot of omega-3 oil. And omega-3, they are the unsaturated fat. They are very good for your brain. And this is like the only so-called oil from animal that is good. And most of the unsaturated fat many of them, they're from animal. Some saturated fat, they are vegetable, like coconut, like palm. We talked about that before. And these lots of creamer or condensed milk that we use almost every day, creamer, add to the coffee and stuff. All these contain vegetable fat, which are not very healthy, but we still do that because it tastes good. The truth is that usually the more unhealthy the food, the tastier they are. The unhealthier the food, the tastier they are. And then the trans fat. Trans fat, they are all bad. As I mentioned before, trans fat, they have the CC double bond with the hydrogen atom arranged diagonally, and it is man-made. When it is man-made, then our body cannot recognize it. When our body cannot recognize it, then our body cannot break it down. So there are only two outcomes: either we get rid of it, through excretion, or it just accumulates in our body. So trans fat is bad. Make sure that you eat less of this food, fast food. They are cheap and they're low price, and we can get it really quickly, and they can fill our stomach really good. So many people, including me, I use fast food for when I'm in a hurry. But actually, it has a lot of trans fat. It is very unhealthy. Even chocolate. Okay, this is another killer. I'm a chocoholic. I love chocolate, and this is really bad. Okay, phospholipid.